Good morning, BookTube, YouTube. This is Johnny. Time to make a video. I looked last night and it's been 5 days since I made a video. And it is a Sunday here in Southwest Michigan. It is November the 23rd. It is a Sunday. It is 8:52 in the Hermit Hut, and I am waking up to another Sunday. It's all sunny day. It's a sunny day. Usually, over the years, we've been living in this house going on 34 years, 33 years, and this time of year, sometimes you see snow. But I'm thankful that there's no snow yet. I hope it doesn't snow until at least maybe in December. But yeah, some years, November, there'd be a couple inches of snow on the ground. So yeah, this is a Sunday. My wife went to church this morning around 8:30. She makes coffee for a Sunday school, and she sets up for coffee. And so I'm here waking up. I got up about 8 o'clock, so it's 8:54. I've not even been up an hour yet. So I thought what I would do is just talk about, I got some new books last week, and show you what I've been reading. You all know I read Christian books in the mornings because I'm a Christian, and in the afternoons I read nonfiction. Generally, nothing is set in stone. And in the evenings I read fiction. And as far as my diary, my paper diary, as you know, my videos for BookTube, YouTube is part of my online diary, Crooked Fingers. In Crooked Fingers, I post these videos. I post videos from YouTube. I take pictures of birds by our bird feeder. I post pictures of just the reality around me, and but I consider my videos part of my diary, and I keep a paper diary. I have since 1968, and I'm on page 951 this morning. I haven't written anything yet. I'm still waking up. So yeah, waking up, and I just thought I got some new books, what I've been reading. As far as this morning, you know, I read different Christian books in the mornings. One morning I'll read Van Manstraet, Theoretical Practical Theology, Volume 5. One morning I'll read The Eternal Son by the theologian Robert Latham. One Sunday I'll read, I just got the works of John Cotton. I'm reading his treatise, The Way of Life. And I'm also reading in the mornings from Volume 5 of the works of Thomas Goodwin, one of the great English Puritan divines. I'm reading his treatise of Christ the Mediator. And then after I read that, there's some sermons in here. After you have Christ above Moses, what's I told? The supremacy of Christ above Moses. And it's interesting, I got a comment on one of my videos recently. He said, I don't believe in Moses. Moses was a legend. The Jews were never in Egypt. It's all legend. And I thought to myself, well, Moses is one of the major figures of the Old and New Testament. He's mentioned hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Even when in the Gospels, when Jesus went up to the Mount of Transfiguration, Moses appeared to him with Elijah. So if Moses never existed, why did he was on the Mount of Transfiguration with Jesus? It doesn't make sense. Anyway, no, and my comment, response to that comment was, well, I just look forward to meeting Moses in heaven. But anyway, I'm reading Thomas Goodwin, Christ the Mediator in the mornings, and I'm reading something else. What else? Robert Latham, The Eternal Son, Christ the Mediator, Practical Theology on the Application of Redemption in the Church. Must be something else I'm reading. I'm reading a book on Thomas Goodwin, a theological Christ. He wrote a book, Christ, on union with Christ in Thomas Goodwin's writing, something like that. But as far as nonfiction, I've been reading at least last couple of days. I got this last week. It's I had to drop off some recycle at a local thrift store called Legacy, just a couple blocks from where we lived. And I went in and I found this, a biography of Edward Marsh by Christopher Hassall. And it says here, Edward Marsh, patron of the arts and friend and confidant of Winston Churchill. And when I was looking at the flap, it says here, Edward Marsh, during his lifetime until his death in 1948, Edward Marsh was at the center of social, political, literary, and artistic life in England. He was nearly 50 years the intimate friend of Winston Churchill, and for a quarter of a century his private secretary. A dedicated patron of the arts, he personally discovered and encouraged from their early efforts many of the greatest writers and painters of our time. Yeah, and so he was friends with Rupert Brooks, who was a very famous British poet during the First World War, during that time period, Edwardian time, that time period. Catherine Mansfield, James Joyce, John Mansfield, Robert Graves, A.E. Houseman, W.B. Yeats, Somerset Maugham, Clive Bell, Edmund Gruce, Dylan Thomas. In addition, the book contains many letters from and to Edward Marsh. His own letters filled with anecdotes, humorous sidelights on the great of his day are in themselves superb examples of the art of letter writing. So yeah, I found this, and I already had a biography in my library with by Christopher Hassall. I had this biography, Rupert Brooke, a biography by Christopher Hassall. You all know, if you've been watching my videos for the last 10 years, one of my favorite time periods in literary history is from 1890 until around 1930s in British literary history. Bloomsbury, Virginia Woolf, also that time period in Paris, in Berlin, and it's interesting, you don't find that so much in New York City and United States. You do have the Greenwich Village, early 20th century. I think the great time for literary history for me in America is the time of the American Transcendentalists. Ralph Waldo Emerson, David Thoreau, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Emily Dickinson, the Alcotts. That's, to me, is one of my favorite periods of time as far as literary history in America. I can't really think of any really other time period. Maybe the 1980s in America. There are a lot of writers I like at that time period. But anyway, I had a biography. I haven't read this, but as you know, the primary things I collect and I like to read are biographies, memoirs, letters, autobiographies. And so I was kind of pleased to find this, and I've been reading it pretty steadily in the afternoons and at night, sometimes at night. And I watch it when I'm watching college football or professional football on mute. I read this, but I have not read this yet. So, and as far as literary fiction, I finished reading that thing I was reading. I can't remember now what it was. Oh, Schackentroff, A Requiem by Michael Lentz. I put that aside because I picked this up. I was going to give it a rest because, you know, it's very, very hard reading. Experimental novel and translated out of German by Max Lawton. And I put that aside last week, and I've been reading this. Waiting for the Fear. I can't pronounce the writer's name. He was Turkish. Alsop, translated from the Turkish by Ralph Hubbell. So these are short stories, and this is what I've been reading for fiction last couple of days. So I've been reading this in the New York Classics original. So I've been reading this. So that's what I've been reading. As far as fiction, so I can't think of anything else I've been reading as far as fiction. I can't remember. So I got some new books. Well, one thing when I mentioned when I picked this book up at Legacy thrift store, excuse me, I found another book, a novel at Legacy. I've never heard of this, but it's called The Stones of the Abbey, a novel by Fernand. I think it's French. I never heard of this writer I've never heard of this novel, but it's translated out of French by Edward Giollott, originally published in England under the title The Stones of La Thoreau's. I don't know. It centers around, it's like a historical novel around a cathedral or a 20th century abbey. So anyway, don't know much about it, but I picked it up. It looked interesting. It's only $1. So going to new books. I mentioned in my last video, my wife went to Grand Rapids, which is about 25 minutes from where we lived. We live near Lake Michigan, and you go east about, I don't know, it's about a 25-minute drive to Grand Rapids. When we were in Bible college, my wife and I, we met in Grand Rapids. Our oldest son and our two sons were born in Grand Rapids. And so my wife went to Grand Rapids with a friend of hers. And when she was in Grand Rapids, she was going to visit Reformation Heritage Books. And I said, pick up these Puritan reprints. They had two of them. The one I had to get from Amazon. And the ones she picked up for me at Reformation Heritage, these Puritan reprints, was Mount Pisgah, A Prospect of Heaven by Thomas Case. He lived from 1598 until 1682. This is a reprint of a 19th century edition. In the 19th century, the American Tract Society published Puritan works. And this is from the London Religious Tract Society, this edition. You can tell by the print. If you look at the print, you can see it has that kind of 19th century print. So she picked this one up for me, and she picked this one up at Reformation Heritage, Puritan reprint, Practical Godiness and Ornament of All Religion by Vincent Alsop. And he lived from, well, he died in 1702. So these are Puritan reprints, and the other one I got from Amazon, God's Thoughts and Ways Are Above Ours, especially the Forgiveness of Sins by John Shower. So, as you know, I've been reading the Puritans since 1975, and Reformation Heritage is committed to reprinting the 17th century English Puritan divines. Not only that, but the New England Puritans, the Dutch Puritans, and so I got these three. And I don't know when I'll get around to reading them. I collect them. They're always really cheap, maybe 15. One of these was this one here was only $5. My wife said. The other one was like 13. One was 15. So those are the new Christian books, Puritan reprints. Check out Reformation Heritage Books. As you know, I started this channel, my YouTube channel, to promote good Christian literature, and you can't go wrong. Of all the Christian literature out there, you can't go wrong reading the English Puritans. So yesterday I received 3 new books. I think they're all new. As I was reading Edward Marsh, this name keep coming up, and I wanted a biography of him, and I found this biography and I got it in the mail. And the person that kept coming up and reading the life of Edward Marsh was Robert Stickler, and A Life by Matthew Sturgis. And I wanted to know more about this individual and also I like reading biographies of men and women of that time period, and because Edward Marshall, like right now in this biography, this is around, it starts around in the 1890s, and I'm in right around, I think 1909. I think that's the time period I'm at now in the biography. But I think it's just before the outbreak of the First World War. It's called there's a certain literary movement, the Georgian movement of poets and painters and writers of the time period. So I wanted to, I like reading about that time, and prominent painters or poets or writers, or I even collect books on Churchill. I behold a lot of them, but I have several biographies on Winston Churchill in that whole time period. But I picked up this to read more around that time period. Walter Stickler, A Life by Matthew Sturgis. Also, when I was on Amazon, I look at biographies, and I didn't know this biography was coming out, and it's a biography on the writer Denis Johnson. It's called Flagrant Self-Destructive Gestures, a biography of Denis Johnson by Ted Geltner. I can't pronounce that name. But he wrote, Ted Geltner wrote a biography on Harry Crews. I forgot to bring it up. I read that a couple of years ago. Harry Crews is one of my favorite contemporary American writers. And also Denis Johnson is one of my favorite contemporary American writers. He died, I think, in the 80s of, I think he was 67. He died of some form of cancer. But they came out with a biography of him. And I didn't know it was out. I immediately ordered it. What Denis Johnson is kind of famous for is his little book, Jesus' Son, Stories by Denis Johnson. This was kind of made into a movie too. I didn't know that. I never watched the movie. But he's known for that, Jesus' Son, Stories by Denis Johnson. He also won the National Book Award for his novel, Tree of Smoke. I haven't read this. I don't remember reading it. But I'm putting this on my list to read soon. At least in 2026, I want to read The Tree of Smoke. I have all of the writings of Denis Johnson. He also wrote plays. He also wrote poetry. And the last thing I found by Denis Johnson was at the Book Nook, his book of poetry, Incognito Lounge, by Denis Johnson. It's a picture of him. Yeah, I have other two books of the poetry by Denis Johnson. So, and then I found, so yeah, Jesus' Son, he's really famous for Stories by Denis Johnson, and he won the National Book Award by Denis Johnson. Tree of Smoke. Yeah, the Tree of Smoke. I really want to read it. I read other books by Denis Johnson. American Gothic. I read a number of years ago. The last new book I got. You know, I'm all into letters, and I came across this a couple of weeks ago. The Selected Letters of John Updike, selected by James Schiff? I can't pronounce the name. And you all know that one of my favorite American writers is John Updike. I have everything. He wrote poetry, short stories, novels, art criticism. You can get big volumes of his reviews and essays, and he was a man of letters since he was really young. He is one of my favorite writers, and so I had to buy his Selected Letters by John Updike. My favorite American writers are like John Updike, Saul Bellows, Joyce Carol Oates, Norman Mailer, Gordon Vidal, Jim Harrison, Thomas Wolfe, just goes on and on. John Cheever, just goes on and on. John Steinbeck, of course, the American Transcendentalists, Mark Twain, just goes on and on and on. Jack Kerouac, my poet Allen Ginsberg, things like that I like. Jonathan Latham, people like that. Anyway, I was excited to get, I don't like that word excited. I don't get excited. I'm looking forward to reading the letters of John Updike. I read his biography a number of years ago, and I have it downstairs. And so I plan to read Selected Letters. I'll keep this up there on my to be read pile. So yeah, I got the Selected Letters of John Updike, edited by James Schiff, I can't pronounce it. New biography, well, there's a new biography on the writer Dennis Johnson by Ted Geltner, and a biography on Walter Stickler. Matthew Sturgis had another biography, and I haven't got it in the mail yet. It's on Aubrey Beardsley, a biography. He was around the 1890s. Also, a book that I plan to buy by Walter Sturgis, probably next month. Passionate Attitudes, the English Decadence of the 1890s. I'm gonna get that next month. I'm gonna buy that. But he also wrote a biography on Aubrey Beardsley. You know his, he was an illustrator for the Yellow Book around the 1890s. He was in this same circle of painters and poets and writers, and he wrote Matthew Sturgis. So I look forward to reading this. It's kind of small print, but I'm going to get into it when I finish reading that biography on Edward Marsh, which I'm really enjoying. So that's what's going on in my reading life. So this week I do see my psychologist again. It's been 4 weeks already since I've seen him. Nothing going on really. Just writing in my diary, reading my books. Weekends we watch football. This week is Thanksgiving. Thursday I think is Thanksgiving. We go down the street and have it with our son and his family. My daughter-in-law's family is coming down. They live north of Detroit, up there. So yeah, we'll go down the street and have Thanksgiving with our son and his wife and our 2 granddaughters, Josie and Cora, and Emily's parents, Vic and Mitch. So yeah, that's what's going on. I hope you do have a blessed Thanksgiving. Yeah, it's really, we lived in a time when a lot of people don't have food. And especially right now, we live in very hard and difficult times for many people. Homelessness is rampant. Poverty. But anyway, so I hope you're all doing well. I do thank you for subscribing and for your comments. And yeah, check out Dennis Johnson, Jesus' Son. He's kind of famous for. I really like his poetry, Dennis Johnson. Like I said, I'm going to try to read this at least next year. I don't know if I want to finish reading Schopenhauer, A Requiem by Michael Lentz. I don't know when I'll get into these the biography by Dennis Johnson, but I do plan maybe next year I'll get into it. And we'll be reading the letters of John Updike, and always reading the Puritans, Practical Godiness, good book to read as you prepare for the second coming of Christ, the Day of Judgment. Really being blessed reading Thomas Goodwin. This is coming to an end. So may the Lord bless. Have a blessed Thanksgiving. And until next time, bye.